Hey, Superleague. Been a long time since you heard from me, but here I am. A little update in this lovely July. A couple important things to talk about. Start off with a little bit of an update from what's going on. We've got a pretty competitive baseball season going on. If you look at the standings, we got a couple 7-7 teams right at the playoff margins, and it's competitive sort of all the way up to the top. First place is still up for grabs, all that good stuff. Thank you, Greg, for being competitive as a newcomer relative to some previous newcomers we've had in the ignominious Nathaniel Cohen slot. Let's make a group effort to not have Josh win. I think that's something we can all really get behind. At least he's not dominant like he was in basketball. He's a very beatable team. Let's all do that. I believe in us. The parity's a lot better this year than it was last year. Last year it was basically like there were good teams and then there were bad teams and there was basically nobody in the margin. So thankfully this year we've got some marginal teams and some competition, which is nice to see. The only garbage team is Ty's. No offense, Ty, you're a good person, but your baseball team's terrible. His asset, basically his only good asset, which he tried to trade so hard, was Yasiel Puig, and Yasiel Puig sucks now. So you really hate to see that. Anyway, if the standings from baseball held through the rest of the year, we would have final standings that looked like this. Josh would win, then Joe, then Ty, then Caleb, then Lucas, then me, then Ben, then Dave, then Keegan, then Jeremy, then Cam, then Team Alex/Greg. So that's what that would be if nothing changed from right now. I think, let me check real quick, but I think that it'd be hard for anybody but Josh to win. But let's try to make it happen. He could always lose in the first round of the playoffs. All right, moving on to the important matter. This is the second take of this video because the first time it literally took me like 9 minutes to explain this concept, even though it's very simple. So I actually scripted it a little bit, and so that hopefully this is shorter. As I've talked about a couple times before, we're going to vote on whether we want to make our annual summertime farm system draft into an auction format using the same dollar currency that we use throughout free agency for the rest of the season. This has a couple upside benefits to it, not least of which is just more strategy. I think that if anybody's done an auction before or anything, but especially fantasy sports, there's more strategy to it than a draft. A draft is a pretty passive thing. Being in an auction, having to think about every pick gives everybody a chance at every player. And you have to be smart about it. I think that's a good thing in general. It also, and I really like the feel of this, ties the main sort of strategic currency, which is those dollars, into basically all sort of the currency of the year, throughout the year. And I think that does good things for sort of consistency, logical consistency almost throughout the year, which I think is a good thing. The important things about this change would be we need to keep the parity of it. One thing, obviously the worst player would get the first pick in the draft, which is good. I think that's an important thing to keep going. So the way around that, I think, is to adjust the amount of auction money depending on your place in the standings at the end of the year. And I'll go through a couple of ways that I thought about going about that implementation. I'd like to keep the dollar amount so just to be a little bit clear, you would start the auction on this summer auction with something in the vicinity of $150, and that would be the same $150 with which you go throughout the rest of your year. And so you basically, it's one currency pot sort of throughout the rest of the year. And I think it's important to keep the same number of dollars in the entire pot from year to year, just because we have the same sort of general feel for draft values, so that we don't have $90 Rams picks, and we sort of are developing a sense of the money situation as we go. There are two options that I've sort of thought about for doing this. One is the increases and decreases by $10 as you go up or down the standings. So it would go, the last place team would start with $200 all the way down to $100 for the first place team. That's a pretty big discrepancy. We could also do it by $5, so that would mean the best first place team would auction with 125, and the worst place with 175. Those are listed in the Superleague Hub doc if you want to look at that. Again, we will first vote on, as we've done before, on the question, whether or not we even want to think about changing this, and then on the content of that change, that is the implementation. So this question and implementation voting, that worked, I think, well last time, so we're going to go back and do that. I'd like to do this auction draft between the 1st and the 4th of August. That's that first week. I think we can get that done. I'll send out a doodle again, as in previous years. Hopefully we'll make that work. Just needs to be out by football season. I just realized something as I was filming this. That's what that little hesitation was earlier, that if we use the same number of dollars in the whole thing, then we spend extra in the draft, and then or in the auction, and then we'd have less throughout the year on a sort of aggregate scale than we did through any other year. So maybe we'll do something like there's a sliding scale based on where you finished, plus like an extra chunk of $30 or something like that. We'll talk about that in the implementation discussion. I'll also put that in the Google Doc. All right, so that's it. Kept that a little shorter than I did first trial of this. And last time, this was a good thing. I think I'm going to give $5 starting next year. So in this auction, if it happens, or just regular free agency money, to anybody who gives me a video response that's at least 30 seconds. And the other stipulation I'm going to put in for this time is that it needs to be just you for at least 30 seconds of that video. And the purpose of this is to avoid the complete low effort, no show Caleb Lucas debacle that was their video last time. That was fucking garbage. So let's not do that. Let's make good videos. Bye.